This is the OEM thermostat with the grommet, the rubber grommet removed. This is the aftermarket part with the rubber grommet attached. It just slots on around. There's a rim inside of it. There's the top part, the top part. There's the top part, the top part. That is the thermostat housing right here. To install the thermostat into the housing, you take the upper lip, you carefully place it inside. It should line up with the small hole on the top and firmly press inside. That is the thermostat in that thermostat housing. There are two 12mm bolts that bolt into here and here on the thermostat cover for the housing. They go right in here. There's 1 and 2, and there's a small pigtail electrical connector where it connects into the slot here. You should be able to place it with one hand and drive it with the other hand, and after you get the two bolts connected here and one on the bottom side below, you can crawl underneath or hunch over and connect the electrical connector there. How I got the bottom 12mm bolt on is I took a 3/8" extender with a 12mm socket, and I used the ratchet to very carefully lay it in here and torque it down. Now, there's an electrical connector right here that you're supposed to clip on before you bolt this in. Otherwise, it becomes a little more difficult. The top one is a little easier, it's more straightforward to just clamp in. There's more room. Alright, the next step is to reconnect the lower radiator hose. And to get the hose clamp on here, I tend to use channel lock pliers. They work great at pinching it and then sliding it forward. All you have to hold it with one hand, keep them pinched, slide it all across, and then release. Alternatively, you can take the pliers and the channel lock pliers, put it to the end on the plastic, then take a flathead screwdriver, winch it in between the rubber and the plastic carefully without scratching or marring it, push it all the way forward, and then take the pliers and then place the metal hose clamp on the rubber grommet for the lower radiator hose. Okay, to reattach the intake manifold assembly, you take the EGR valve, the pipe, you angle this entire piece sideways, drop it in carefully, get this to line up in very carefully due to the piece of metal here in the clearance. Drop this in, and what I did is I took a zip tie and I took the hose clamp right here and I squeezed it and compressed it so it's all the way open, and the little piece of plastic that the hose will attach to right here swivels back and forth, and you can, with a great deal of effort, get it to go on and then cut or somehow release the zip tie after everything is assembled. Alright, next step is to reinsert the metal pipe here into the hose and apply the hose clamp, and then take a 14mm socket and ratchet and reinsert the mounting bracket. Alright, the next step, you get underneath the vehicle, you connect the Christmas clamp here into the metal socket here, the little hole. Then there is a screw that is supposed to connect into the bottom part of the air intake manifold here. There's not a lot of space. What I ended up using was a bit inside of a Torx bit extender with a ratchet. Otherwise, there won't be enough space, and you'll end up scratching or marring the radiator here. Next, we're going to take a 12mm, drive these 5 bolts in. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Next, we're going to drop the fuel rail back down, take 2 12mm bolts and connect them back, and then take the plastic adapters and they just snap right in. Next, you're going to want to reconnect the electrical connector here. Your next step is to reassemble this unit. If you had taken it off, there are 2 10mm bolts. There's one on the top right here, right there, and there's one on the bottom side right here. I use a 1/4 extension with a 10mm socket and a ratchet. Alright, your next step should be to take 2 10mm bolts and place them back in here. They should have washers. After you're done with that, for the EGR, there should be the bracket mount over here on the pipe. This piece of metal flies back and forth. I would suggest holding this pipe with one hand and hand tightening one of these or both of them just a little bit. You have to really fight it and keep it at an odd angle with some space, so that way it can actually go in straight, then take the 14mm. You may have to disconnect this hose again and slide your stuff back and forth as needed, and that should be it. Then you're going to want to reconnect this electrical connector and put it back in the little slot. Alright, next step is take the hose clamp after securing the hose back onto the unit and tightening down the hose clamp. And this hose is actually supposed to connect to this nipple, and the one from earlier with the hose clamp should connect to the bottom down here on this nipple of the unit. Alright, the next step is you take a 10 millimeter, 4 10 millimeter bolts, 1, 2, 3, and 4 on the bottom, and this assembly can just kind of pivot in and out of the way. You want to keep the hose disconnected until you're done reinstalling this. And this is supposed to actually connect to the top one, and the bottom hose with the nipple, this nipple right here with the hose clamp. Alright, your next step should be to take this electrical piece and push the Christmas clip back through the clip there and reinstall the electronic piece here. Alright, these 3 black screws that we had put in the EGR in the bracket should have been 3 silver ones. I apologize. So you put the filter after you clean this off if you want, and clean this out with air. You put 1, 2, and 3. They are 10 millimeter. Alright, the next step should be take this hose clamp after pushing down the top piece of this hose into the bottom L-shaped fitting of here. Tighten it down with a Phillips. Hook up all the connectors. There should be 1. There should be 2, which plug into the top part, and then there should be a 3rd one right here. Lastly, we should be able to take the clips and secure them safely on top just by pushing them up, pushing it up, and there should be another few in the back. And to get the electrical plastic dust cover on, you should be able to slide it sideways. You might have to move some of the cables out of the way, push down on the one plastic peg and the other plastic peg after they're in, insert the 2 plastic screws on top, and it should be reassembled.